I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Crazy people who would kill everybody in here if they could.
You gave them a weapon.
Read people who have no place on the planet if you're different than they are. It's about people who will take women in the soccer stadium and kill them for sport. And if you think that won't come your way, then you need to get a history book. So count me in for winning the war, no matter how long it takes. The only reason we haven't had another 9/11 is because we've been after these bastards all over the world.
I don't know if there's different policies or not, but he and I were really welcome at the Obama.
And you guys got the
And actually, we put some hands stuff out, but we didn't have a permit. We didn't have to do it on the advance. We were there.
area of so I don't want to bombard that or have if I understand I would just like to that's no time. On-campus designated the event is here. That might work out. That might work out as well.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Great.
What about all these news vehicles that are parked? What about all these news vehicles that are parked in the middle of the driveway?
What about them?
Why don't they have to move?
Well, I mean, they've left the area for people.
Well, even
Stuff like that.
There's a big area right there.
I understand that. What you're planning on doing is, as people are coming in, hand out flyers and things like that.
So if we stand right here, then it's good?
Well, no, we already set up. We have the freedom of speech area, and what we did is we met you halfway, and we're going to put you right there in the shade. Kind of like a compromise. Does that work? So you can be right there.
So basically we're over there where nobody will be able to see us, and we won't be able to
You have these flyers, you have some signs, and you're going to move them right over there. Well, how is that not where people are going to see you?
How are we going to contact people when we're like 20 feet away over here?
Well, I mean, like in every single protest, I'm sure you've been to a lot of them, we don't usually go ahead and crowd the door with people.
Well, we're not crowding the door, though. We're standing out to the side over here.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many more people you're going to have.
I think this is about it.
We're trying to give you an area, and that's going to be your area right there.
Why can't this be our area? That's the thing I don't understand. I mean,
That's what we set up for you right there. Actually, you're
Why was
supposed
that?
to be in another area.
Why was that specifically set up over there?
I'm not going to go round and round with you.
I'm not trying to go around. I'm trying to. No, I'm just trying to see like why is it that was specifically chosen for us to be there?
Because we have a freedom of speech area, and that's set up for protest. You follow that part? Freedom of speech area on each campus is a designated area. Technically, we shouldn't even set that up for you. We have a freedom of speech area. Okay? If not, then everybody would be scattered everywhere, and it's hard to kind of control. It's kind of hard to control, events if everybody just sets up where they want. Make sense? We have a freedom of speech area. Sergeant decided that would work. Okay? So if everybody can move over there, that would work out good. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Appreciate your cooperation.
What that day is going to be. That might be the day that they attack us. Doesn't matter. Schools don't matter. Culture doesn't matter. Let's meet bombs. Schools don't matter. Culture doesn't matter. Schools don't matter. Culture doesn't matter. Schools don't matter. Culture doesn't matter. Let's meet
We know you're here because you care about what happens in this community on both sides of the aisle. And I obviously know that I'm very confidently invited Majority Leader Senator Harry Reid to be here today. And his leadership would make a very big difference in this debate if he would come forward to work on both sides of the aisle to get this done. And our President, who's the Commander-in-Chief, to come forward, because we are willing to work with both sides of the aisle, but this is an issue that is too important to our country to just let happen, or to be used, by the way, as a bargaining chip in another debate. Really, this, in my view, is way too important. And this is something that cries out for resolution before the election. Because if you wait till after the election, this is hanging over the heads of our military, and as Senator McCain mentioned, there are a lot of jobs at stake as well. And certainly our Department of Defense is not a jobs program, but if our men and women in uniform don't have the very best equipment and can't rely on the very best technology, then we are not in the position we should be. We are not keeping faith with them and making sure that they have what they need. And that is produced in the private sector. And our defense industrial base is a partner and a very important part to making sure that our men and women have what they need. And what does it mean for jobs in this country? Overall, the estimate of the report done by George Mason University, 1 million jobs. As Senator McCain said, 4,200 jobs estimate in Nevada. In my home state, New Hampshire, it's 3,000 jobs. So this is a very important issue to every state in this nation. So we appreciate your having us here today, and we look forward to answering your questions. And it's my honor to introduce Colonel Lindsey, who is the senator from South Carolina. Thank you.
There's really not a whole lot there. I'm trying to get questions. One, thanks for coming out. To the school, thank you for allowing us to use the school as a venue. To those who came out who agree with us, disagree with us, trying to understand why we're here, I really do appreciate it. Of all the issues that are working in America, this one probably the least understood and the most dangerous. You know, I've been in the Air Force for 30 years. I'm a military warrior, so they don't let me around anything that goes fast, which is good. You know, the only people I think that ever wanted to kill me were probably my clients. But the air crew out at Nellis, you understand what Nellis does for the Air Force? Nellis Department could be held as a chip to make some of us raise tax rates. Well, we're not going down that road. You know, President Obama did sequestration by raising the top rate. Half of it came from raising the top rate, the other half came from spending without the government. The House did sequestration by cutting food stamps and other programs. We had a plan that predicted when 3 federal employees retire over the next decade, only hire 2 back. There are 3 different plans. Nobody's in a room trying to bring it together. And this is where we need leadership from Republican leaders, Democratic leaders, and the President himself. The President spoke about the devastation done to our farmers. Have you been following the drought? Our farmers need
in office now. Because I cannot emphasize enough, it's not Kelly and Lindsey and me that are saying this, it's our uniformed leaders, and it's our Secretary of Defense that are saying we won't be able to defend this nation. What could be more important? And the thing that's a little frustrating is that not enough Americans are aware of the seriousness of this challenge. So all I can tell you is I think we have to have the American people demand that we do it. And so I can't really give you a definitive answer. You want to say anything?
Well, there'll never be 60 Republicans in the Senate, no matter what happens. And the Republican Party has as much blame for this as the Democratic Party. It takes 2 to tango on this issue. So what I would like to see happen is that Nellis Air Force, are you listening, people here? Nellis Air Force Base future is very much at risk here. If this happens, Nellis Air Force Base will no longer be what it is today. And that is true of all the major defense installations. So what will Romney do? Romney says he didn't like sequestration as it was constructed. Well, that's good to know. But how do we avoid it? This is August. No one is in a room trying to fix this. Harry issued a press statement about us coming. I like Harry. We all get along as best we can. And at the end of the day, I hope the idea that we would use devastating defense cuts as a bargaining chip for a debate on taxes would make most Americans sick. Because no matter what you think about these wars, the men and women who've been fighting them deserve better than that. And I can tell you, if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, everything we know today is going to change dramatically overnight. It will send the Mideast into chaos. And they're hell-bent to get a nuclear weapon. And I hope sanctions work. But let me tell you, if they don't work, it will be the American air power, not the Israeli air power, that can stop the Iranians completely. Israel can do some damage to the Iranians, but we have the ability to do tremendous damage to their desires to get a nuclear weapon. That ability over time will be lost in the future. And for those who yearn for peace, the best way to maintain peace is to have people afraid to go to war with the United States. I want to be an agent for peace, but I want to have a military that people in their right mind will not take on.
For me, for the first congressional district here in Las Vegas. So you're not alone here in Las Vegas. I remember when I graduated from Notre Dame and got commissioned as an ensign, we were headed towards that 600-ship Navy. I look around today and I look at the 285-ship fleet, and it does concern me a lot. It also concerns a lot of the constituents that I talk to. They have two major concerns. One is that they know cuts are going to come, but they don't want to cut military or government capacity to do what we need to do. The second concern is that they want to make sure that we don't forget the veterans, especially those who have been injured and are going to need help for the next 50 to 60 years of their life. I wonder if you could address that.
Well, Chris, first, before you go, we have a question for you. As a Navy man, how the hell did you end up here? Good question.
There's a lot of water over there.
Well, thanks for your service as Navy Kelly.
I would say, well, first of all, this issue of if we, in terms of our veterans coming home, the way, you should know that the way sequestration does work is that the veterans' health care piece of it is exempt from it right now. That's the way the law is written. But that said, there's no question that you can't put our forces in a position where if you hollow out, you hollow out the force, then you make it more dangerous for our forces. And you make it riskier for them if they don't have the equipment that they need. When you ask people to do things and you don't give them what they need, the equipment they need, that's the real danger here when we think about hollowing out our force, because it means people's lives at risk. And I think that's one of the concerns, the deepest concerns that I have about where we are. And in terms of veterans' health care, we're going to have a big challenge going forward with our men and women who are coming home to serve. They are amazing, brave individuals, and we need to be paid for them based on what they've done for our country. But that's...
I served in the active duty Marine Corps, and I was a veteran in the First Gulf War. I'm also a police officer, a former police officer, who served for many years in that capacity. I'm not anti-military, I'm not anti-security. However, from my own experience in the First Gulf War, we had a workforce that was based upon a peacetime military. And we went into Kuwait and we kicked their, excuse my French, we kicked their asses. And the senator from New Hampshire described the situation in which the Marine Corps being pared down to a force size of, say, 190,000. I was part of that 190,000. And we did what we were supposed to do, okay? The sequestration situation that we have today is a part of the whole debt ceiling crisis a strong arm tactic that led to your body trying to figure out a long-term solution. A long-term solution because the debt that hangs over all these families has to be dealt with. As a result, the pain's got to be felt equally on both sides. I'm totally for a strong military. However, the military has been feeding at the trough of the taxpayer for 10 long years. Wars without end. And it concerns me as a private citizen today and a veteran that these wars, they last forever. But the majority of the people that serve in these militaries, that we have now, are the poor and the middle class. They do the fighting, they do the dying, they are the wounded and the scarred from these things. And they're forgotten. You should have your hearing or this thing over at the new veterans facility that's over on Hand Road. That's more of a reflection of what's been going on for the last 10 years. I'm totally for supporting our military. But we got to drive forward on two fronts. Achieve victory in warfare, but at the same time, not hold our children hostage. And the debt has to be dealt with. So I just ask, and I respect you all, especially Senator McCain greatly, that we can all work together. It's just, I have a hard time swallowing a lot of these facts and figures that you're putting out here, just from my own experience.
Well, I know that others want to comment. First of all, thank you for your service, and also thank you for your service as a police officer. I was an attorney general before this, and that's a tough job. Let me just say that certainly you hit on an incredibly important point, which I'm the mother of a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I don't usually like them to come to other states I don't represent, but this issue is so important to me. That's why I'm here today. But this issue of the debt, no question, it is, as certainly when Admiral Mullen was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he said it's one of the greatest national security threats to our country is our debt. When we did this deal on the debt ceiling, we left most of the spending on the table. So what happens is we left over 60% of what we spend our money on the annual basis in the federal government on the table. And we left it to, 30+% to make all the cuts. And so, as Senator McCain said in the opening, so 19% of our federal spending is defense. And it's going to take 50% on the cuts. And non-defense spending, we didn't talk about that today, but it's going to take the other 50%. Because we didn't budget, because we don't deal with the big picture of what are the drivers of our debt, and as Senator Graham said, the mandatory spending programs that are on autopilot, and if we don't show some courage there on a bipartisan basis and address those, we're going to continually be in this cycle. And with respect to our military, I take the Assistant Commandant on his word when he says that this, in terms of our Marine Corps, even going back to the Gulf War and comparing that this is really when the Marine Corps are unable to respond to a single Navy contingency, which, these are the men and women, of course, that we need to take the expert advice from. We're looking for savings in defense, and we are going to reduce $487 billion over the next 10 years. But to take a disproportionate cut from our defense at a time when the challenges we face around the world aren't getting any easier, I think is a foolish and short-sighted decision, because as you know, every time we have gone down in the past, whether it's in Korea or whether you looked at in the early 90s, we've had to ramp back up, and then the cost of doing that have been even greater in terms of our military and what it has cost us to do. And finally, all of us here, we all certainly want to do as much reform as possible, whether it's acquisition reform with the Pentagon. We know that there are changes that can be made there in terms of finding savings, but it's not going to get us to $1 trillion over the next 10 years when you combine the reductions that are being made and the $500 billion on top of it. So I would.
Well, let's just be honest. You serve your country, you serve non-defense. There's no way in hell you're going to balance the budget without entitlement. 60-something% of the money we spend is entitlement. Medicare and Medicaid alone in 20 years comes from all the revenue coming in to the federal government. The baby boomers, my generation, are retiring at about 10,000 a day or a month. I can't remember the number. And there were 3 workers for Social Security recipients. When I was born in 55, there were 16. The wars have been about $1 trillion. How long they go on is not the issue for me, it's how they end. You know, if you got a magic timetable of where we fight to this day and we quit, we're going to lose every war. We didn't start this damn thing. Remember how it started? It started when Afghanistan fell into the hands of crazy people who would kill everybody in here if they could.
You gave them a weapon.
Remember what this war is about. It's about people who have no place on the planet if you're different than they are. It's about people who will take women in the soccer stadium and kill them for sport. And if you think that won't come your way, then you need to get a history book. So count me in for winning the war, no matter how long it takes. I want to answer this question about the budget. Look at the amount of money we spend on defense in terms of gross domestic product. We've been at war now for 10 years. It's on the low end since World War II. 24% increase from 2008 and 10 on non-defense spending. We've doubled the size of the Department of Education, and we've had real cuts in the military. So count me in for cutting the military, but by God, we're also going to do something on the other side. It's going to take 2 to tango here. So when you look at the facts about what we're spending on our military, it is not disproportionate, it is on the low end. And the Air Force that I'm proud to be part of, these guys have been flying and fighting for 10 years. During World War II, everybody went to the fight, and young man's got a point here, only 1% fought this war, most of us have been unaffected. But during the 10 years of flying and fighting, we reduced the Air Force. World War II, we built it up. Now you're talking about, while the war is still going on, and another one on the verge of coming about, of actually gutting the military. That's not how you balance the budget, because there will be no social security without national security. There will be no way of life if the people that we're fighting are able to roam the globe freely and impose their will on others. So the numbers regarding defense spending are not disproportionate. But I am, as a Republican, willing to do things that some people in my party said we shouldn't do. And that is close the deduction or loophole and take that money and avoid sequestration. The Grover Norquist pledge, I'm willing to say that's not appropriate now when you're $16 trillion in debt. I'm willing to take deductions off the table for the few, like ethanol. Take that money back in and pay down some debt and make sure we don't destroy the military. We just need partners on the other side.
Can I also add that if you took all the defense spending, including war spending, it would barely get you over half the deficit last year. So we can't even get half the deficit. If we took it all, we spent nothing on protecting our country. So to put in perspective of why, if you don't get the entitlement piece of it and really show some courage there and reform those programs so that they're actually there for those who are relying on them too, because they're going bankrupt.
Ma'am?
Hi, Mary Jo Anderson from Las Vegas. And first off, I respect all three of you. You all have a job to do. I'm definitely a counterpoint. Let's remember what the war is about. Let's get real about what the war is about. The war is about money. The war is about making money. The tour the three of you are on is about the presidential election. Mr. McCain voted for the law that approves sequestration. Respect the three of you. I hope you all respect our witness as well. The gentleman before me stated it much more eloquently than I did. I mean, I'm happy, personally happy, that the crowd is minimal here. I'm sickened by the amount of money we spend on the election process in whole. And that is bipartisan. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I wish more people were here so they could hear the voices from us who believe the money really does need to be rededicated to the human services program. Some of the stats that people don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, we spend $2 billion plus on about $2.3 billion per day in military money. We spend under $3 million a day in human services programs. There are people in this room who are unemployed. There are people who are on the street. All right? The politicalness of it has got to go away. The three of you are strong in what you do. You have years in the military. You were a POW. I respect you. You and your family have been involved in politics for years. I mean, when are we going to cut this shit? And no disrespect, but we've got to stop. We've got to stop. This is not a bipartisan effort. This is a partisan effort. And the fact of the matter is, you know what, there's somebody up here who can tell us specifically why we need to dump more money. As an example, the Creek Air Force Base. This is right down the street from us. We need to dump more money into the Oscar Creek. I spent 2 weeks in Afghanistan last year. We don't need to dump any more money into the drone program that's killing innocent civilians in Afghanistan.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'm being shut down. You know, plus you are, right?
You haven't asked a question.
No. Mr. McCain said we don't have to ask questions. We can always ask questions. So I hope we need to cut the deficit. I think we need to take an honest look as a bipartisan group as to how we do that and not scam the American public and fear the American public into believing we are not safe.
Well, thank you very much. I'd just like to mention about Afghanistan, if I could, to remind you, even though it's been a long time, the attacks of 9/11 originated in Afghanistan. And it's because the Taliban took over and they cooperated with Al-Qaeda, and the attacks originated in Afghanistan.
Yes, and why we go to Iraq to go to war for 10 years before we got to Afghanistan?
You know something, sir, that we allow people to stand in line and ask us questions and make comments, and we really don't appreciate it if you're rude by yelling, because then that disrupts the whole kind of process. But could I just finally point out, and I thank you for, Madam, for your passionate views, and I respect them, that if Afghanistan again evolves into Taliban control, every expert I know believes that Al-Qaeda would return, and we know what Al-Qaeda does. We learned that on 9/11. So I hope that we can appreciate the fact that the reason why we went there was a compelling reason, because of the needless deaths of thousands of innocent American citizens.
I could just add, I want to compliment the Obama administration for the aggressive use of drones. They have gone after a very vicious enemy that's trying to find a safe haven all over the world. I'm glad that President Obama ordered the attack on Ayotte, an American citizen who is inspiring people to kill Americans like the major. I'm very, even though I would like to be president, I very much appreciate what President Obama has done with the drone program, because it is a way to keep the enemy off balance the next day. And if you've got any loved ones in Afghanistan who are serving, most of the IEDs are coming out of Afghanistan. This drone program allows us to intercept and interdict and stop terrorist plots from coming our way. So bottom line, I disagree basically with what the lady said, and I do want a bipartisan solution. I'm not asking for us to fix this all overnight. Let's just get 4 months off the table. Let's don't start the next Congress with it hanging over our heads. And as a Republican, I'm willing to raise revenue to fix the problem, but not tax rates. If you believe in Princeton goals, I do. What did they do? They eliminated all deductions for $2 trillion, $1.2 trillion a year. They took the money and applied it to lowering tax rates to create jobs and paying off debt. Let's use that same model. There's some tax. I'm willing to eliminate corporate jet deduction. We take that money and don't pay for fighter jets. I'm willing to eliminate whaling captain deductions, and I'm sure the whaling captains won't appreciate that. But there's plenty of things in the tax code that we could do away with. And take that money, we'll give it to a few people, and apply it to problems like sequestration. And to her point about sequestration, if you have a special needs child, you know anyone with a special needs child, let me tell you, the education budget gets hit hard here. Special needs programs are very much at risk. This idea of cutting across the board line is not a good idea. Sir?
My name's Dennis Duvall. I'm from Prescott, Arizona. A lot of people I've noticed even on the streets of Prescott don't think that a person's entitled to an opinion unless they've been in the military. So I should say, before I start, that I am a veteran. And one thing I learned in the military is that our ward is young men dying for old men's wars, and that's how it's always been. That's how it is today. Now in your state, Senator McCain, in our state, people are getting kicked off Medicaid, food stamps, one of the nation's highest foreclosure rates. The people in the state of Arizona are hurting. And here you are running around telling us, warning us that we have to keep spending $2 billion a day on military, war profiteering, on an optionally manned, nuclear-capable next-gen bomber. The people in Arizona want to know, Senator McCain, what the hell is wrong with you? The people in your state need you. For example, you've taken a strong position on the corporations and our people issue. Well, help us in Prescott to get our city council to just pass the corporations and not people resolution. There are lots of things you could be doing for the communities and the people in Arizona instead of this tour of fear that you're embarked on. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As you know, I have obligations in the United States Senate, and among those are to try to make sure that the men and women in the military are trained and equipped and able to defend this nation. I don't expect you, obviously, from what you had to say, to take my word for it, but I hope you would respect the Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, who is not a Republican, who said that if these draconian sequestration takes place, it would destroy our ability to defend the nation.
No, I do not respect.
Well, fine, if you don't respect it, but I think most Americans do respect it.
The only people he's speaking for are the war profiteers, the defense contractors that want to continue making all these systems that we don't need and that we'll never use.
That's right. If you have that view of Secretary Panetta, I respect that view.
It is by you, thank you.
But I really don't believe that most Americans share that view of Secretary Panetta or his predecessor, Secretary Gates. In fact, Secretary Panetta is a different party of mine, but I happen to work closely with him and respect his views enormously and his leadership. So, again, we just have a difference of opinion. I respect that opinion. That's why we have these events, to listen, and I listen carefully to everything you and your friend there said, and it makes us understand better the views that many people have, and that's why we have these events.
I just wanted to say, when we talk about these across the board, the domestic side is going to take the $500 billion as well. And as Senator Graham said, if you put the two together, the problem with it is that we need to reduce that, there's no question. But when you do it in an across-the-board way, then you don't prioritize. You don't say, well, we need to help special education more, we need to help cancer research more, as opposed to something else that's not as productive. It's just across the board for everything. And the solutions we are asking people to come to the table for, and the solution we propose, the three of us up here, deals with both sides of this. And so it comes up with ways to replace the sequester with spending reductions that actually deal with both sides of it. And so our focus isn't just in the solution being, we all serve on the Senate Armed Services Committee. We are here to talk about the military impact, but please understand that the solution is going to deal with both sides of it. And that the way that this moves forward on a bipartisan basis is that we find the ways to address our debt, and not a mean act, and not across the board, but prioritizing in the way that we should. And I would say this as well. You want to talk about an impact in this community. I have no doubt that people are hurting here, people are hurting across the country. And we have spent a lot more on food stamps. We've invested, if you look at the percentage increase on food stamps, it's very dramatic. That said, we went to visit Nellis. Here's the number. Between the military and civilian families, it's 41,000, just from the impact of Nellis. And it's roughly 6,500 jobs. And just because of the people from around the world that will come to participate in exercises at Nellis, it's 88,000 who actually go in this area, will come and visit Nellis from other countries and other places. 88,000 use the hotel rooms here. Just solve it all out. Whether it's the person who's a waiter at the hotel, or whether it is someone who works for a company that supports the base, if things are hurting here, this will hurt here even more. Now, we're here to talk about the national security impacts, but there's no question that there are other impacts to the community from people who work very diligently to support not only the base, but perform many other functions that are supported by even the people who come and visit the base from other countries. So this will have an impact on the community of those who are hurting, unfortunately. And there's got to be a better way, and there is a better way. It's going to take bipartisan leadership to get it done.
We are close out of time, but I know both two remaining speakers, so please go ahead. We are really about only have to allow the last 2 weeks, spent close to an hour now, so go right ahead, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm L.D. Johnson. I was 32 and a half years in the Air Force. Matter of fact, the last time I was this close to Senator McCain, I was about 2,000 to 3,000 feet above you 40 years ago. Congratulations.
Why didn't you come get me?
Poor family, a little tough to land there.
Thanks for service. Go ahead.
We tried to make all the noise we could, and seriously, in 1972, the last know that you would not put that.
Thank you.
I do, like some of the others, appreciate you being out here to try and highlight not only this issue of sequestration, but overall defense issues. And I love some of the terms that Senator Brennan used, because we are folks. I got to spend time in Vietnam, to Korea, to flying over Iraq, and a number of other places. And again, I have the fortune to be with our Air Force for 32 and a half years. Lastly, in the same position as Jeff Lofton, who you met earlier today, 10 years ago. I got that on. It's so important together trying to explain not only what this is because of the jeopardy this country will be in, but overall defense issues and overall economic issues. Because as our country, as this, I think, even points out, is slipping so much more closely into an endless drug type culture, that it's only about me and not about the overall welfare of our country. My two specific questions are, there's been debate about whether the Warren Act was actually going to do anything to accelerate, and that's again why I'm glad you're out here. There's been some discussion recently, I think you said agree, but I'm not sure, that said, no, the Warren Act is not going to affect how people will have to receive the layoff notices on the 1st of November or maybe 1 January separation of loss of employment. Do you think the fact that the Warren Act is there is going to help your cause?
And let me tell you what the Warren Act is. The Warren Act is a federal law that requires people who may lose their job because of cuts in the federal budget, particularly in the defense area, to be notified so they can plan. In 2007, Senator Obama tried to expand the notice to 90 days. It was a Warren Act plus, Fair Notice Act. He and Senator Clinton wanted to make sure that people who were subject to being laid off because of cuts in the defense industry would be put on notice so that they could get their lives in order. Well, where are we at today? Here's what the law requires. It requires 60-day notices, in some states 90-day notices, by every contractor who may be forced to lay somebody off because of defense cut through sequestration. Guess when the 60-day period is? The Friday before the election. Lockheed Martin several years ago failed to send out the warrant notices, and they had, I think, a couple thousand, if not more, employees they had to let go because of previous defense cuts, and they had to pay the 60-day wages plus the fine. If you're a defense industry out there today, and you believe that you will be affected by sequestration, which is the law of the land unless somebody changes it, and you don't send these notices out, you're putting yourself at legal risk. So Harry Reid is dead wrong about this. They're afraid of these notices hitting Friday before the election. And when they thought up this idea of sequestration, they included Republicans. So we've had this gun butter argument since time began. And count me in the camp of wanting to make sure you did first things first. I've never known a time in history where the world was hurt by a strong America. A strong America has been a good thing for those who believe in freedom and tolerance.
That's debatable.
So every time Americans got weaker, bad guys get stronger. Look at the 20s and 30s. We had these same speeches given by well-meaning people who were really sincere. Lindbergh, a national hero, was going all over the world. You can do business with Hitler. You don't need to worry about these people. You need to worry about these. You need to worry about the Iranians getting a nuclear weapon. I guarantee the Israelis did.
I worry about our
existence too. They're going to kill you and wipe you off the map, and you happen to be the only Jewish state left. You'll take that seriously. And I'm here to tell you, it's been over 10 years since 9/11, but the only reason we haven't had another 9/11 is because we've been after these bastards all over the world. And we're going to stay after them. And we're going to have to pay the difference and technology. So at the end of the day, the Warren Act should be followed, and any company that's affected by the Warren Act that does not send these notices out, you're doing your employees a disservice, and I think you're violating the law.
Can I also add that you may be aware as well that the Department of Labor issued, political appointee, the head of the Department of Labor issued what's called an advisory opinion to these companies after they had said we have to follow the law, the Warren Act, to issue these layoff notices from the Obama administration, and basically said, well, it would be inappropriate to issue the notices. I would follow up with what Senator Graham said and said that here's the problem with the Department of Labor's advisory opinion. Their own regulations say that they have no authority over the Warren Act, that they can't give you advisory opinions on the Warren Act. And so here we have, I know, a last-minute political football to get these companies not to follow the law, but the law is there to allow the workers to plan. And the law is there for a purpose, and you've got to follow the law. And I would just add to what Senator Graham said, this may be it's a total political move, but the law is what it is, and these notices have to go out.
Finally, Lockheed Martin said they'll have to send out 140,000 notices. If you got any doubt about what this will do to the defense industrial complex, and to the person who's talking about these folks with war profiteers, in my state, they made them mine-resistant vehicles. Remember the MRAP? The Humvees were getting blown up. They were basically coffins. The MRAP was developed in South Carolina, saved thousands of lives, and the people who developed those systems are not war profiteers, they're patriots. They work really hard. And it's nice to go to these plants that make these defensive weapons that save lives, and have the soldiers come back and say thank you. So one, I don't think these are profiteers at all. I think they're patriots.
The executives are.
And Mr. Cummings, I just wish you would talk to our local officials and convince them to come in such a forum where we can express ourselves. You've been very open. You've been, I mean, it's incredible. Thank you. I would criticize, however, some of the things that you're doing. It feels like we're in Alice in Wonderland. We've heard all this preaching about the debt, especially from Republicans, since 1979, when Reagan started running for president. And he even went a lot further than you did, man, and said that it was immoral. Yes, he increased the debt from $1 trillion to $3 trillion by the end of the 8 years that he was in office. And now it's almost $16 trillion, which is more than our GNP. We're running a deficit of $1.5 trillion a year. Where are we getting that money? We're getting that money by declaring war on the entire world, where we can ship our dollars, and the rest of the world is forced to take those dollars because of the Bretton Woods Agreement at the end of World War II, made in your state, by the way, that the dollar is the international currency. China is being forced to buy $2 billion every day from the United States just to keep their economy, creating huge economic problems in China, having to buy so many dollars. They've now accumulated about $3 trillion. The national debt of $1.5 trillion is far more grave than any threat that we stand from a foreign country. That's just laughable that any country is going to attack it. Every country. We have industries here. We have an industry, particularly here in Las Vegas, that could receive Chinese people. But our own government, because of this warmongering on the part of the Congress, Harry Reid included, that Chinese are a terrorist threat, that Chinese can't get visas. Only about 2 million out of 300 million Chinese have visas to come to the United States. With that, if 5 million Chinese came to Las Vegas, they would spend about 5 times as much as that loss that you have up there, $600 million. They would spend. They have increased the income of Macau, which no Chinese person would take Macau over Las Vegas. It's more difficult to go to Macau. They have to get a special permit from the government. They cannot go to Hong Kong on the same trip. They can only get that permit 3 times or 4 times a year. There are no permits that are required to come to Las Vegas. And yet, our own government, thanks to our Congress and our President, does not allow these people to come because they might be terrorists. And Macau now makes $36 billion a year with their gaming. Las Vegas makes $6 billion. 8 years ago, we were the same. This is the sort of Alice in Wonderland. China has one old aircraft carrier that they picked up. There was a barge over that they got over in Russia. That's the only aircraft carrier that has their whole navy. To think that they would come over here and attack the United States is just totally absurd. But you are creating a real danger for our country with the economic policy and shuffling all this money all over the world and forcing people to take it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And obviously, you have a lot of facts and figures, and obviously, you studied this issue in significant depth. I would just respond by saying that I don't envision a war with China, and I don't envision a confrontation with China. But I do believe that a strong America, the strong alliances in the region, will help bring some restraint to the behavior that China is exhibiting almost every day as regards to the South China Sea. With Vietnam, they cut a cable. With the Philippines, they prevented one of the Philippine ships from leaving an area. They just announced that they have elected some kind of parliament on one of these areas, and and when you look at the official figures as to what China is spending on defense, my friend, it's far different from what they're actually spending. Now, the Vietnamese lived for 2,000 years under the Chinese. Who are our new best friends? Yes, because they are scared to death of the Chinese behavior, which they believe threatens them. I'm not speaking for the United States. I just know too many Vietnamese officials who are very worried because of the long history that they have. The Philippines now are very concerned because of this dispute of the South China Sea. And again, I want to repeat that China is a world power. They're a world power. And the question is how does China behave as a world power? And in my view, the best way to ensure that that is a way that they're a cooperative and contributing major power in the world is to make sure that we have strong alliances, that we have a strong military presence, and that our presence in the region would put the brake on some of the ambitions that the Chinese have. And I want to just finally say, the reason why America is a great nation is today is because we have always observed, among other reasons, is that we've always observed freedom of navigation in international waters. We have never allowed for that to be curtailed anywhere because of the implications of it. The Chinese are now drawing a dashed line in the South China Sea and talking about their sovereignty of that part of the world. We cannot allow that to happen, and the best way to combat that is through friends and alliances and strength in the region. So I respect your opinion. I don't disagree with many of the facts that you state, but I can also say that I agree with President Obama strongly when he has announced a policy where we will increase our military presence in the region. And I think most Americans would support President Obama's policy there, too. I know that my two colleagues and I...
You bring up a really good point.
Save Jeju Island.
I know we've got to go. The China's a very good friend nation. I think it's a thuggish regime. I have a lot of respect for the Chinese people, but very little respect for the regime. Remember the blind gentleman? Why was he in jail? Because he wanted to stand up at a meeting and say, I don't like the fact that the government forces people to have abortions. Where you pro-life, pro-choice. That's kind of a draconian way of doing business. Syria. Russia and China vetoed resolution after resolution to protect the people of Syria from being slaughtered. If you're looking for China to buy into the freedom agenda and the idea of people charting their own destiny and forget it, they don't have no questions. You got just a handful of people picking the next leader. But they are a world power. We can do business with them. But if you go to Nellis and you ask about threats facing our nation, they'll mention China's exporting of technology. The Chinese build a lot of weapons. Not so much that they're going to come and bomb us, but they're going to sell this technology to almost any willing buyer. People really have to come to grips with the opportunity China presents as well as the danger. And President Obama and John Regina are right about this. We need to stand up to China. We need to speak truth to power. Anytime you're more worried about money, and that's your point further than you're about what's right, we need to speak loudly and boldly against the human rights violations in China, regardless of how much money they borrow from us. And we have an unhealthy relationship with China. They are financing our national debt. That's why we need to get out of debt so you don't depend on China, and that's why we need energy independence so you don't have to fly oil from people who hate your guts. These are the two things that we really push for strongly in a bipartisan fashion. And the last point is about attacking the nation. The 9/11 attack cost less than $1 million to plan and execute. The 19 hijackers were all students who overstayed their visas. They spent very little money planning the attack, and they killed 3,000 Americans. And the reason they used airplanes, because they couldn't find anything bigger to use. The threats we face are different. We're not fighting a nation state. There is no capital to conquer, no Air Force to shoot down, no Navy to send. That doesn't mean you don't need an Air Force and a Navy, because the people who wish us harm are trying to improve their weaponry. And one of the reasons we got to push back against China and Russia is because they're the source for a lot of these weapons.
We are the source for a lot of their weapons.
We're the source of
That if Iran develops a nuclear capability, they may not put a bomb on top of a missile that goes to Jerusalem, but they will share this technology reason thousands have died in the war on terror and not millions because they can't get the weapons to kill millions. That's the challenge of our time.
Millions
Sir,
have.
because of your eloquence, I will let you, even though we're over time, I know you want to respond very quickly, and then I want to thank everybody for coming. Go ahead, please.
You know what I mean? You're great. Thank you. I just want to say you're very right about this South China Sea situation. It's a total outrage. Those items certainly don't belong to China. But this is totally out of character for China, and I think it's due to the aggressive reports that we put out every year declaring them a possible enemy. And this problem has to be solved by diplomatic channels, and there has to be a way to it. But you're totally right. That's just the truth.
Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Could I just say thank you for coming, and it's great to be back in our neighboring state, and it was 116 yesterday in Phoenix. Thank you very much for coming. It's great to be here. Thank you.